So then it also seems like we agree that the core element of tribal alliance, which would have its roots, say, or its analog in the chimpanzee proclivity to identify with the dominance hierarchy of the troop, is something that's a source of the proclivity for human social aggression. So there are other reasons for group belief and the commission of atrocity that can't be directly attributed to religious dogma.
Yeah, but I mean, and what most worries me about religion, I would say, obviously religion can channel these primate urges in unhappy ways. But what most worries me are those cases where clearly good people who are not necessarily captured by tribalism per se are doing the unthinkable based purely on religious doctrines that they believe wholeheartedly without good evidence. So you have the person who joins ISIS who wasn't even Muslim before they converted 16 months ago, and they go all the way down the rabbit hole to the most doctrinaire, most committed, most uncompromising view of just how you have to live in this world if you're going to be Muslim, which leads to certain outcomes that should really worry us.
Okay. So let's take that claim apart for a minute, because that's not your claim specifically, the claim that you were describing. See, because that's really not the claim that religious fundamentalists make. The claim they make is worse than that, because they claim that the Quran, say, or the Bible for that matter, is the literal word of God. But more than that, they claim that their understanding of that word is correct, which means they conflate two things. Because you could imagine a situation where you had a book, and I'm not saying this is the case, it's an imaginative exercise, where you had a book that had all the answers, that was extraordinarily complicated. And so that when you read it, it wouldn't be obvious that you understood it. You can't get an uninterpreted version of the book. And so the fundamentalist claim is far worse. It's that not only is there an absolute reality, truth, embedded in the book, but that their particular take on that absolute reality is the absolute take on that book. And so they conflate their own, they make an assumption of their own omniscience and then pass that off onto God, so to speak.
Except in their defense, it's very easy to get there because some of the claims in the book are not at all hard to parse. In fact, so many of them can only be honestly interpreted one way. So to take, again, an example that will be not inflammatory to you, but makes the point, it just says that the remedy for theft in the Quran is to cut the hands off a thief. I mean, that is the unambiguous injunction. The shocking fact that the creator of the universe thinks you should live this way for all time. And people like ISIS, this is my claim, it's just most of what is in these books, and this is what worries me about those books because they can't be edited, most of what's in the books is clearly not the best that humanity is capable of in the ethical domain. And so clearly, and this is true for morality, most pressingly, but it's true for science, it's true for economics, it's true for anything else that we are wise to pay attention to. It's like slavery is condoned in the Bible, in both Testaments, and in the Quran. So this is not, unlike what many people expect, it's not that this doctrine is being used as a pretext for people who would otherwise do terrible things. No, these are, I would argue, in many cases, psychologically normal people who are simply convinced of the absolute veracity of these ideas. Once you grant that, and this is where there's a tension between how we pursue the same goals. As we've just established, we have many of the same goals, but insofar as you make religion look palatable, insofar as you suggest to your audience that they can have their religious cake and eat it too. They can have their reason, they can have their respect for science, they can have a 21st century worldview, but they can also hold on to everything they love in Christianity or fear to lose. And it's undoubtedly mostly Christianity, but whatever, any religion. My concern is that it keeps us shackled to these Iron Age philosophies and these Iron Age conversations where we should be having a 21st century conversation about everything, ethics included.
The weirdo, transgender, trans, identify cis, I've got a penis but I can still win Glamour Woman of the Year award, and who are you if not only not an entire woman despite the fact I've got a penis still, you're a bigot, and then find Caitlyn Jenner attractive if you don't find her attractive. This is what, and actually to cite the other person you just said that would trigger you, Sam Harris, Mark Stein said, this is the conversation we're having when the mullahs will nuke us. Everyone will be discussing whether gender, despite the fact they've not had any operation. There's a woman in Britain. We just have to call her transgender and regard her as transgender. We've just got to start calling her a non-sexual pronoun. Now it's an assault on the language apart from anything else. Anyone who cares will all be discussing whether somebody who has got a penis can be Glamour Woman of the Year when the Islamists come in with Kalashnikovs. It's pathetic. It's a breakdown in our society and you have to rectify it.
But what most worries me are those cases where clearly good people who are not necessarily captured by tribalism per se are doing the unthinkable based purely on religious doctrines that they believe wholeheartedly without good evidence.